I hung up and immediately called my attorney Marcus Webb, who'd handled my property purchases. Marcus, my parents forged a quitclaim deed claiming ownership of my Tahoe property. They've listed it for sale to fund my brother's medical school tuition. Sarah. That's felony fraud. Multiple counts. Forgery, filing false documents, attempted theft by deception. You're talking about serious prison time if prosecuted fully. I want it prosecuted. They need to understand this isn't acceptable. These are your parents, who are trying to steal $2.1 million from me. Family doesn't excuse felony fraud. Understood. I'll file a police report with Placer County Sheriff and contact the listing agent. We'll also need to alert the title company and recorder's office about the fraudulent documents. This is going to get messy, Sarah. It's already messy. They made it messy when they decided to commit fraud. My phone buzzed. My brother Ethan calling. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text. Sarah, please call me. I can explain everything. Mom and Dad are just trying to help me. Don't ruin this for me. Don't ruin this for him. As if my property rights were the problem, not the fraud. Marcus worked fast. Within 2 hours, he'd contacted the listing agent, a woman named Jennifer Caldwell from Tahoe Luxury Properties. She was, according to Marcus, extremely concerned, and immediately pulling the listing pending verification. He'd also filed a police report with Placer County Sheriff's Department and flagged the fraudulent quitclaim deed with the county recorder's office. But there was a complication. Sarah, your parents have already accepted an offer, Marcus said when he called back. Someone offered $2.05 million this morning, all cash, quick close. Your parents accepted it 2 hours ago. They accepted an offer on my house? They're proceeding as if they have authority to sell. The buyer put down $50,000 in earnest money. There's a purchase agreement signed by your parents as co-owners. This is escalating beyond a simple listing fraud. What happens to the buyer? The sale won't go through. Title insurance will flag the ownership discrepancy. But your parents have now defrauded a buyer who put down $50,000 in good faith. That's wire fraud if they've communicated across state lines. That's federal charges. My parents were facing federal fraud charges. My phone rang again. My father this time. Sarah, your mother is hysterical. She says you're reporting us to the police? Over helping your brother? What kind of person have you become? The kind of person who doesn't tolerate theft, Dad. You forged documents claiming ownership of my property. You listed it without my permission. You accepted an offer and took someone's earnest money. Those are crimes. We were going to pay you back from the proceeds. You'd get your money. It's not about the money, it's about you stealing my property. And how exactly were you planning to pay me back when you priced the house $200,000 below market value? Even after Ethan's tuition, you'd be short. Silence. Dad, did you even think this through? Or did you just assume I wouldn't notice or wouldn't care? We thought you'd understand once you saw it was for Ethan's education. He's your brother. He needs help. You have plenty of money. I have plenty of money because I worked for it. I went to medical school. I did my residency. I built my practice. That lake house is my investment. You don't get to steal it because Ethan needs tuition. We're not stealing. Yes, Dad, you are. You forged legal documents. That's forgery. You falsely claimed ownership. That's fraud. You accepted earnest money for property you don't own. That's theft by deception. These are crimes with prison sentences. You'd send your own parents to prison? You'd steal $2.1 million from your own daughter? He hung up. An hour later, my phone rang from an unknown California number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Dr. Morrison? This is Agent Donald Pierce with the FBI San Francisco Field Office, White Collar Crime Division. My heart stopped. FBI. Yes, ma'am. We've received a referral from Placer County Sheriff regarding a real estate fraud case involving your property. The case involves interstate wire fraud, communications between California and Massachusetts regarding the fraudulent sale. That brings it under federal jurisdiction. I see. I need to ask you some questions about the timeline of events and your parents' actions. This is a serious case, Dr. Morrison. Wire fraud carries a maximum sentence of 20 years federal prison. 20 years. My parents were facing 20 years in federal prison. Agent Pierce, I want to cooperate fully. But I need you to understand, I reported this fraud to protect my property rights, not to destroy my family. I understand, ma'am. But fraud is fraud regardless of family relationships. We take these cases very seriously, especially when they involve amounts exceeding $2 million. The interview took an hour. Agent Pierce asked about every detail: when I bought the property, whether I'd ever discussed selling it with my parents, whether I'd signed any documents, whether they'd had prior access to my property. When we finished, he said, "Dr. Morrison, I'll be honest with you. This is one of the clearer fraud cases I've seen. The forged documents are obvious. Your signature doesn't even match. Your parents' communication with the buyer crosses state lines, which is wire fraud. And they accepted $50,000 in earnest money for property they don't own. We're going to prosecute this. What happens now? We're coordinating with Placer County to make arrests. Probably within the next 24 to 48 hours. You should prepare for your family to be very angry with you." They were already angry. But angry was better than successful at stealing my property. The arrests happened at 6:47 a.m. the next morning. I know because Ethan called me, crying as federal agents walked our parents out of their Connecticut home in handcuffs. "Sarah, what did you do? There are FBI agents here. They're arresting Mom and Dad. For fraud. You did this. They did this, Ethan. They forged documents and tried to sell my property without permission. For my medical school. They were trying to help me. By committing federal crimes. That's not help, Ethan. That's criminal behavior with your education as an excuse. I can't believe you. You're destroying our family over money. You're a surgeon, you make $500,000 a year. You could easily afford to help me. Whether I can afford it isn't the question. The question is whether our parents have the right to steal my property to fund your education. They don't. I hope you can live with yourself." He hung up. The property alert hit my phone at 7:42 a.m. New activity detected on 3492 Lakeshore Drive, Lake Tahoe, California. Listing agreement filed. Contact your property management team for details. I was in surgery at Boston General, 3 hours into a complex cardiac procedure. My scrub nurse saw my smartwatch vibrate repeatedly and gave me a concerned look. I ignored it and continued operating. Whatever was happening at my Lake Tahoe property would have to wait until this patient's heart was repaired. 4 hours later, I checked my phone in the surgeon's lounge. 17 missed calls from my property management company, AlertSecure. 12 texts from my brother, Ethan. 3 voicemails from my mother. I called AlertSecure first. "Dr. Morrison, thank God you called back." It was Karen, my account manager, sounding frantic. "Your parents filed listing paperwork on your Tahoe property this morning. They presented documents claiming joint ownership and authorization to sell." "That's impossible. I'm the sole owner." "That's what flagged our system. We have your deed on file showing single ownership, but they produced a quitclaim deed dated 6 months ago allegedly adding them as co-owners. They've already signed with a real estate agent and scheduled photographer appointments for tomorrow." My parents had forged ownership documents. For my lake house. The one I'd purchased 2 years ago with my surgical practice earnings. A $2.3 million investment property I rented out when I wasn't using it. "Karen, those documents are fraudulent. I never signed a quitclaim deed. My parents have no ownership stake in that property." I suspected as much, which is why I called immediately. "But Dr. Morrison, they've already listed it. It went live on the MS an hour ago. The listing price is $2.1 million. They were selling my house for $200,000 less than I'd paid for it. Desperate sellers. Send me everything. I'll contact my attorney and the listing agent. Don't allow anyone access to the property." I pulled up the MLS listing. Professional photos, clearly taken months ago when I'd last visited, showed my lake house in summer glory. The listing description read, "Motivated sellers relocating for family health reasons. Beautiful Tahoe retreat. Perfect for year-round living or vacation rental. Price to sell quickly. Family health reasons." What family health reasons? I called my mother. "Sarah. Finally." He sounded cheerful, oblivious. "Did you see? We listed the Tahoe house. The realtor says we should have offers within days. The timing is perfect for Ethan's medical school tuition." My stomach dropped. Ethan's medical school? He got accepted to Stanford. We just found out last week. Isn't it wonderful? But the tuition is $70,000 a year, and with living expenses, well, you know how expensive it is. We figured selling the lake house would cover his first 2 years easily. Mom, that's my house. You can't sell it. Don't be silly, Sarah. We're family. You make plenty of money as a surgeon. You barely use the place anyway, twice a year? It's just sitting there appreciating while your brother needs help with his education. Surely you can see this is the right thing to do. The right thing would have been asking me, not forging documents to claim ownership of property you don't own. Forging? What are you talking about? Your father had the papers drawn up properly. We're listed as co-owners now. I never signed those papers, Mom. Those are forged documents. What you're doing is real estate fraud. That's ridiculous. We're your parents. We're not committing fraud, we're helping family. Now, the realtor wants to know your schedule for showing coordination. Tell the realtor I'm calling my attorney and reporting this to the authorities. And Mom, you need to cancel that listing immediately, or you're going to face criminal charges. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, you're being completely unreasonable. Your brother's future is at stake. 3 hours later, my parents were arraigned in federal court. The charges were extensive. Wire fraud, interstate fraud, forgery, filing false documents, theft by deception. The bail was set at $100,000 each. They didn't have it. The house they'd mortgaged to help Ethan was already leveraged. Their retirement accounts were substantial but not liquid enough for immediate bail. They sat in federal custody for 6 hours before my uncle, my father's brother, mortgaged his own home to cover their bail. My mother called from my uncle's house that evening. Are you happy now? Her voice was raw. Your father and I were arrested. Handcuffed. Like criminals. Our neighbors saw everything. Your uncle had to mortgage his house for our bail. All because you couldn't help your brother. You're criminals, Mom. You committed federal fraud. This isn't about helping Ethan. This is about you breaking the law. We were desperate. Medical school tuition is $70,000 a year. Where is your brother supposed to get that money? Student loans. Scholarships. Working during school. The same places every other medical student gets it. What he's not supposed to do is benefit from his parents committing federal crimes. You're heartless. I'm realistic. And Mom, you're facing 20 years in federal prison. You need to understand the gravity of what you've done. He started crying. The FBI took our computers. They're examining our bank records. They're treating us like mob criminals over a family property dispute. It's not a family dispute. Fraud. You forged documents. You took earnest money from a buyer. You communicated across state lines about a fraudulent sale. Those are federal crimes. The FBI isn't overreacting, they're doing their job. Please, Sarah. Talk to your attorney. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. We'll drop the sale. We'll make everything right. It's not a misunderstanding. And it's too late. The FBI doesn't drop cases because families have regrets. My father got on the line. Sarah, your mother and I could go to prison. Federal prison. For years. Is that really what you want? I want my property rights respected. I want my family to understand that theft is wrong even when you call it helping. What happens to you legally is the consequence of your choices, not mine. Your brother's medical school acceptance is going to expire. Stanford's enrollment deadline is in 2 weeks. Without funding, he can't attend. Then he'll defer a year and apply for financial aid like everyone else. You're punishing him for our mistake. No, Dad. You're punishing him. You built his medical school dream on fraud, and when it collapsed, you blamed me for not enabling your crime. That's on you, not me. The line went dead. The federal case took 8 months. My parents ultimately pleaded guilty to reduced charges. 1 count of wire fraud each and 1 count of filing false documents. The sentences were surprising. 3 years probation, substantial fines, full restitution of my legal fees, $87,000, and 1,000 hours of community service each. No prison time but permanent federal convictions on their records. The buyer they'd defrauded received their earnest money back with interest. Jennifer Caldwell, the real estate agent, lost her license for inadequate verification of ownership. Tahoe Luxury Properties paid a $50,000 fine to the Real Estate Commission. Ethan deferred Stanford for a year. He applied for financial aid, took out federal student loans, and started medical school the following fall. Funded by legitimate means, not fraud. He hasn't spoken to me since the arrests. My parents sent a Christmas card to my Boston address. Inside was a brief note. We're sorry it came to this. We only wanted to help Ethan. We hope someday you can forgive the misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. They were still calling felony fraud a misunderstanding. I didn't respond. My uncle, the one who'd mortgaged his house for their bail, called once. Sarah, I understand why you did what you did. They were wrong. But they're still your parents. Is there any way to rebuild the relationship? They need to understand what they did was criminal, not just unfortunate. Until they take real responsibility, not calling it a misunderstanding, not blaming me for reporting it, there's nothing to rebuild. That's probably fair, he admitted. The lake house is still mine. I upgraded the security system and changed all access codes. AlertSecure's monitoring is now set to immediate notification of any property activity, with automatic legal response protocols. I use it twice a year just like before. But now I actually enjoy it knowing it's secure. The bank fraud department's call to my parents during their listing process wasn't dramatic justice. It was simply systems working as designed. When you try to sell property you don't own, those systems catch you. They caught my parents trying to sell my $2.3 million investment to fund my brother's education. The FBI made sure they understood that family doesn't excuse federal crimes. Ethan will finish medical school in 3 years with roughly $280,000 in student debt, the same amount most doctors carry. He'll pay it off over time like everyone else. My parents will spend those 3 years on probation, performing community service, and living with federal convictions on their records. The lake house will continue appreciating, now worth $2.6 million, based on recent comparable sales. Sometimes I sit on the deck watching the sunset over Tahoe's clear water, thinking about the fraud attempt that almost cost me this view. My parents thought desperation justified crime. Thought family loyalty meant accepting theft with gratitude. Thought my success was their emergency fund. The federal court system disagreed. So did the bank fraud department, the FBI, and ultimately, me. The lake house stays mine. The student loans stay Ethan's. The criminal records stay my parents'. That seems proportional to the crime. Attempted theft of $2.1 million with federal wire fraud enhancements. Property rights matter even within families. Especially within families. And now my parents know exactly what it costs to forget that. Everything they valued about their reputation, 3 years of their freedom, and their relationship with the daughter they tried to rob. The bank flagged it. I reported it. The FBI prosecuted it. Justice even when it wears a family face.